Sometimes the family that you're born into is the one that breaks you. And the family that chooses you is the one that saves you. Today, I'll be telling the story about the man who stepped up and the one who didn't. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 22 of the Life Vetted podcast. Thank you for being here and thank you for tuning in. Hey everybody, I know that I have been gone for a while. I have been quiet for a long time, but it really isn't because I didn't have anything to say. It's just because I wasn't ready to talk. But today's story is a story that needs to be told. It's not something that I can keep inside. I had to come on here and talk about this. And I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I want to thank everyone for being on this journey with me, even though I've been gone for a bit. You know that quote that everyone always says, but it's dead wrong. And the quote that I'm talking about is, "Blood is thicker than water." Today, we're going to get into a few things, but I'm going to clarify the true history of that quote and the actual quote before it was picked apart by Western civilization and made into what it is today. Again, I want to acknowledge that I know that I've been gone for a really long time, but this story is a deeply, deeply personal one. And even though I'm still in the middle of grief, I felt that this was something that needed to be done and needed to be said. I deeply believe that this is a story that you guys need to hear. And I don't want any pity or anything like that. My podcast has always been about telling the truth and it's for clarity and it's for truth, and I want to honor that. This episode is really about the difference between biology and bond. And I have really talked about a lot of these things in other episodes as well. But this one really cuts deep, and I haven't ever talked about my father much on this podcast, and it's time. So let's start this story back in 2019. In 2019, I was living in a completely different place, and I had just moved out. I had just left about a year. I had left my daughter's father, and I was living by myself in a nice condo. And my dad, my biological father, decided to visit me. Now, to understand a little bit about this story, you have to understand the type of man that my father is. Super charismatic and funny. Always has a story to tell. That's probably where I get my storytelling from. Or it always have a story to tell, always has a quote or some sort of proverb to share. A very relaxed and chill guy, but so relaxed and chill that it's almost dismissive. That it is so chill that it's extreme to the point of not really caring about anything. So it's very, very extreme. But because of that kind of attitude, throughout my entire childhood, whenever I did see him, probably like 1 day or 2 days out of the week, whenever that did happen as a kid, that's fun because you have the dad that doesn't really care about too much, that, doesn't have rules or any expectations at all. He is as much as a carefree person as you are, and you're a kid. So, at that point, it's all fun and games until it's not. So in 2019, my dad came to visit. I was very excited about it. I hadn't seen him in a little bit. And he came to visit me and my daughter and it wasn't very long. It was probably just like 5 to 7 days with us. And we had a good time. It was superficial, just a nice time. It's definitely a contrast from whenever my mom visited because, my mom's so high strung and, well, anyway. But it was nice, and we had a casual conversation about how he wasn't doing very well. He was kind of sad, and this is voluntary information that he told me. I did not pry or ask really about anything. He just kind of volunteered this information to me. He told me about how the woman that he was with and had been with ever since my mom and him broke up, so 20 plus years, like really long time, he was unhappy. That lady gives the term evil stepmom, I think the term was probably invented because of her. Okay, she was not a pleasant woman. She was never nice to me, and she was just if that's a sound that would describe her, that would be it. So he was telling me how it was just awful and how, he was unhappy. And, I just casually said to him, like, you don't have to deal with that. Like, why do you stay with her? She's always been this way, is basically what I said. And I said, well, you can always come here. That's what I said. Being that child that yearns for their mother or their father, right? Not knowing any better at that time. In 2019, it feels like that was like three different people ago. Like, I was so different back then and completely in the dark about things that I thought I wasn't, but I was. And if you know my story, if you've been listening to the podcast, you understand exactly, what I'm saying. That was decades ago for me in 2019. It was so many different people ago that I was. And anyway, we ended the trip. It was nice, and he went back home. And apart from just a few phone calls probably after that, I did not hear from him again. My thought was just nothing really. I grew up that way. I grew up in the way that if I didn't call my parents, they wouldn't call me. If I didn't call my mom, she wouldn't call me. It was my duty. I owed them my life, and so it was my responsibility to check in on them, not their responsibility to check in on me. So when that occurred, I never really thought about it. Plus, it's not like I spoke to my dad all the time. It was never like that. Even when I was a kid, I never saw him super frequently. It was like, every weekend or just maybe on Sundays, etc. So he kind of just disappeared. Then 2020 hit. I moved in 2020. It was obviously a really weird time for everyone. I didn't really hear from him probably again until like 2021. No like birthday calls or Mother's Day calls or anything like that. 2020 was a weird year, so we'll pretend like that didn't exist, right? So into 2021, I remember reaching out to him a few times. And it was very weird because every time I would reach out, he would pick up the phone and sound super like disoriented. Like, hello? Hello? Who's this? Huh? Who is this? Like, super like, he didn't know what was going on. He didn't recognize my voice. He didn't recognize my phone number, even though I haven't changed my phone number since high school. It was very weird. I remember even calling his sister, my aunt, to ask her, like, hey, this has been going on. I don't know what's happening. And I never got a straight answer from someone. I never got a straight answer to say, oh, he's losing his mind or oh, I don't know what, I never really got a straight answer from anyone. As time passed, when I would call him and he would hang up, he would be like, he wouldn't recognize me. He would be like, who's this? I don't know who this is, and hang up. And then days later, randomly, he would call me back and kind of act the same way and be like, hello, who is this? Whose number is this? And then I would say, it's your daughter. It's Ninfa. It's your daughter. And he would be like, oh, I didn't recognize you, or oh, I didn't know who, like, very odd conversations. Okay. Whenever I talked to my dad before this all was going on, again, very like funny, chill guy, always had something to say, always had something funny to say. So this was very odd. And my aunt, his sister, didn't do anything to like settle my worry. She just kind of brushed it off and say, yeah, he does forget things from time to time. He has been weird lately. Like, it was just very odd. So odd to the point that for a whole year almost, I actually was convinced that my dad had Alzheimer's. Like, actually had it. I was like dreadful about it. So dreadful. Like, I even told my dad and my mom were friends with my daughter's father. His parents and my parents were friends before we were even born. I even like told him about it because they were friends. They were close friends. And I even told them about my worry. I even told like my aunt, I told her that too. Once I didn't understand what was going on, I even told her that I thought he was sick. I was genuinely like so concerned and worried about it. And no one really ever like confirmed or denied anything to me. They just kind of let me believe this thing that I thought was true because these conversations I was having with him were insane. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. Then, after a while of not hearing from him, not really knowing what's going on, as always, it was me reaching out, and he would sometimes say, like, you never called. No, you didn't. Like, I never got your phone call. What are you talking about? Like, and I would. I mean, again, I wouldn't call every day, but I would call, like, sporadically, especially after I thought something was really wrong with him. So later, we find out, I find out, that his partner, this woman he's been with, has cancer. I believe it was pancreatic cancer, and she dies. And then, like what seems out of nowhere, my aunt lets me know that his girlfriend, his partner, forbade him to talk to her. And that's really the only family he has, because my grandmother, his mom, passed away a while ago. And so she tells me how this lady forbade my dad, to talk to her for like the longest time. My aunt, his sister, used to go and visit him every once in a while and go chat and have a coffee or whatever. And then suddenly, this woman didn't want my aunt to be around. Very soon after this woman passed away, my father calls me almost 3 times a day, every single day. After she's buried in the ground, this man did not stop calling me for months, every day, to my same number that I have not changed since high school. Why is he calling me, you ask? Well, it turns out that he never did not recognize me. He never did not recognize my number. He was pretending not to know who I was. He didn't pick up my phone calls on purpose, because apparently this woman also didn't want him to talk to me. So this whole time that I thought that my dad was like losing his brain, it was all a lie. He just wanted to keep the peace between him and this woman and whatever it was she was going through. And he didn't want to like stir the pot or ruffle any feathers. So he stopped talking to me. And any time that I would call, where maybe she was like in front of him, obviously the phone is ringing, so he's going to pick up, he just pretended that he didn't recognize me or that it was a wrong number. The betrayal and the pain that you feel from someone's own parent protecting someone else's feelings and sacrificing your relationship because of that is insane. Nothing new to me, because I feel like my mom has done just as bad. And I've had to deal with that and work that out my entire life. So when this happened, it wasn't even super surprising. I'm sure that you guys listening right now are probably saying like, that's fucked up. That's the most fucked up shit I've heard in a long time. Trust me. I know, I'm sure. But when this happened to me, I was not very surprised. I felt kind of silly that I thought he was sick, that I thought he might have something wrong with him. The fact that now he was calling me nonstop was insane. And the reason why he was calling me nonstop was because he needed a place to live. He could no longer live where he was living because He didn't have a joint income anymore, and he couldn't afford it. He didn't want to live with that woman's daughter, who I've known my entire life as my stepsister. He didn't want to move in there because it's a small house and they have a bunch of kids and it's just not comfortable. And he was calling me because he needed a place to stay. That is so hard to say out loud, and it's so hard to make sense of all of it in your head. And looking back now in 2019, when I said, yeah, you can come here, I was just so naive. It was still just like that kid inside of me that wanted their dad, their parent, to love them for no reason, just because, the way I love my daughter. And then fast forward to when this was happening, it just felt so ugly, and it felt so bad in my chest and in my stomach. I felt so betrayed, and I didn't even know how to express it except being angry. And I don't regret it. I don't regret the things I said to him while this was happening. And I don't regret not letting him move in here. Obviously, I didn't do that. I severed all ties with him at that point. And that brings me to this quote that people like to throw around a lot. Blood is thicker than water. And it just tells you how ignorant people are, because that's not even the real quote. It wasn't until the 19th century, the 19th century, early 20th century, where Western civilization completely changed that quote. The real history of that quote, well, actually, it's a proverb. The real history of the proverb comes from medieval Arabic tribal cultures. They used to use this quote back in the day when people would go to war, and the actual quote that was stripped down in the 19th century, the actual quote is, "The blood of the covenant is stronger than the water of the womb." And soldiers would use this, tribals during Arabic tribals during that time when they would go to war and they would fight and they would create this brotherhood. That is the modern translation of what that proverb actually meant. The blood of the covenant is stronger than the water of the womb. It means that the bonds that we choose are stronger than the ones we are born into. The family that you build is stronger than the ones that you come from. And if that is not a quote for my entire existence, I don't know what is. I have no idea what is. About 3 days ago, I lost my stepfather. The only reason why I'm even notating that he's my stepfather is so that you guys understand. I never referred to him as my stepfather. I always called him dad in Spanish, which is papi. I never, when saying a story about him, I never referred to him as my stepfather. Never. To me, he was my father. Period. My mom married him right after she left my dad. I believe I was 3 or 4, and she remained married to him till I was about 10. And they got a divorce. And technically, he's no longer my stepfather after that, but he never stopped being my father after that, ever. Until this day, until he passed away 3 days ago, that man never stopped being my dad. My mom married him. He didn't have to be a dad to me. He didn't need to have any responsibility for me. But he did. He chose me. And that is the most powerful thing that I've ever experienced, ever in my life. And hindsight is always 2020. Looking back now at everything, even though I always knew in my heart, in my soul, that this man had no responsibility towards me, now, after he's gone, it's so much more prominent to me how special he was and how special that whole experience was to me. The only time in my entire life that I had any stability, any safety, any kind of real structure in my life was while my mom was married to this man. He made me feel so safe. I, unfortunately, was sexualized at a very, very young age. So everyone, whoever touched my shoulder, whoever was close to me, it always felt weird because as a child, unfortunately, I had been sexualized. But with him, I never felt that way. His hugs felt like real love, protective and kind. He was always kind to me. He never judged me. He gave me advice and he was honest about how he felt about certain things and he cared. And even though I didn't agree with a lot of the things that he would say, he never made me feel like I was less than or I was a bad kid. With him came 3 step-siblings. For the most part, I know that they didn't like me or my mom. I know that they tried to include us, and I know that at least the youngest one is the one that I was the most closest to because we were close in age, and so we kind of grew up together. And as I got older, he was kind to me. You know, when we were kids, it was the regular kid stuff, like, you know, just like teasing and things like that. But I know that it was hard for them. And I can't understand their perspective, but it couldn't be easy to have your dad remarry someone with a kid, me especially, I was so little, and then watching your dad just like love and care for these new set of people that you don't even know who they are. So I do understand it to a certain extent. To me, this phase of my life with him created a foundation that I could always look back to, and that I could always feel like it was a safe space. If I ever needed my dad, he would pick up the phone. He saved me more than once. Throughout the years in my life, he was there. He's the only real dad that I have ever known. The only real steady rock that I ever known. The only fixed point in my entire life was him. I could always go back to that. I could always go back to that and be grounded in my interactions with him. Feel normal in my interactions with him. I could always go back there and feel like this part of my life was normal like any other kid. And I never felt that. For the majority of my life, I always felt like everything was just not steady and up in the air, and I never knew what I was gonna come home to. I never knew what kind of craziness was gonna occur. The only period that felt steady and grounded and safe and good was the time that my mom was with him. And then after that, who knows? Who knew? I didn't know. I didn't know. It was so unstable. Emotionally, physically, it was so unstable. But my dad was that fixed point. And now that he's gone, it feels like the only fixed person or fixed point or stable thing that I have is myself. And I always could call him. We would always talk, especially after he got his iPhone, a few years back, and we would text. I would call him, I would text him on his birthday, he would text me. And I knew that if I called him, he would pick up. And if he didn't pick up, he would call me back. And it is such a reinforcement that you don't even know you have, because you're not in contact with them every day. And he lives back home in Miami and I'm in Colorado, but it's so bizarre that now that he's not here, it's so bizarre how you realize how important he was, even if you didn't talk to him every day. It was like just like this steady thing in the background that you just knew was there, I remember when I lost my 2 front teeth and he left a card on my bed with his handwriting and his signature, and it said something silly. And I remember him every time, whenever we went out with my mom, somewhere and we'd come back home and I'd be asleep in the back seat. He would pick me up and carry me into bed, tuck me in. Most of the time I pretended I was asleep just because I wanted him to take me. I also remember my dad when school used to finish. My middle school was right down the street from where he lived. Obviously at this time my mom and him were not together anymore, but sometimes I'd miss the bus and sometimes I'd miss it on purpose. I didn't want to go home. I never really wanted to go home. And so sometimes I would walk from my house to his house and he would take me home. On this particular day, I walked over, knocked on the door, and a woman answers the door. She was his girlfriend at the time. I'm not sure if she was living there with him, but she's the one who answered the door. It wasn't him. And I said, "Is my dad home?" And she attacked me. Verbally at first, she said, "Get the fuck out of here, you stupid kid. Your mom and him are not even married anymore. He is not your father. He is not your dad." And then she was screaming like to the top of her lungs. And then she came towards me to hit me. And all I remember is my dad coming up behind her and turning her and saying, "Are you fucking crazy? What is wrong with you?" And like pushing her up against the wall and getting her like out of the house and getting her like out from in front of me. And I never saw that lady again. Ever. After that, obviously my relationship with him remained. But that girlfriend, I never saw her again. And that says a lot. As a kid, middle school, probably the most confusing, craziest time of your life. And I see this person do that. It stays with you. It makes you feel like you're protected, you're chosen, And I don't know if he ever knew. I don't think he ever knew. Ever. The impact that these things had. He probably knows now, but while he was living, I don't think he ever knew that the impact that these small little gestures made on me. I don't think he knew. He was just being himself. He was just being. But those things stay with you. That was my dad. He didn't need to love me when he was married to my mom. He didn't need to. But he did. And then after my mom and him separated, he didn't need to go to my birthday parties or call me or still take me out to eat every once in a while or show up to my graduation or help me with money so I can go to my senior graduation trip. He didn't need to meet my daughter, or every time I'd go visit Miami, take me out to dinner, or when I needed somewhere to stay after I moved out of my house. He didn't need to let me stay in his couch, and he didn't need to do any of those things. So that's why I say that he chose me. And I'm so heartbroken, but I'm so grateful to have had him in my life. And to me, he's my dad. And I know that that ruffles some feathers, especially his daughter, who's way older than me. I know that she always made it a point to make sure that I knew that I wasn't his real kid. I mean, a lot of the times she was drunk when she would say that, so she probably doesn't remember, but she always wanted to make sure the two older siblings just kind of wanted to make sure that we knew that, we weren't really family, which is fine. I posted a post for him a few days ago just to honor him, and she made sure to comment on it, and I just know the subtext of that message. I know the subtext of it because I know her, and I remember many times where she was drunk and she would make sure to let me know that me and my mom were like outsiders. So the subtext of that comment that she made on my post is basically saying, like, it's my dad, not yours. It's fine. But blood didn't build me. Blood didn't raise me. Blood didn't give me a safe place. Choice did. Choice is what gave me all those things. And I honor the man who chose me. And I release the one who didn't. This episode is really for anybody who feels unclaimed by their parents. I'm grateful for the man who stepped up and claimed me and has claimed me since I was 3-4 years old. And I know that the woman that I've become is in great part to what he did for me. And if he wouldn't have been there, I don't know that I would have had an anchor to have held on to have something, a foundation, something to build upon. I don't know that I would have had that, because after him, I didn't. He taught me what family feels like. What it feels like. What it feels to be steady. Not always agree, but still feel like you can always count on someone. You can always have a safe place to come back to. Nobody in my entire family and my blood family ever gave that to me, ever made me feel that way to this day. And I'm gonna miss him. I am going to miss him so much. What I'm feeling is real grief from love. I know that when other people pass on, I won't feel this grief. Not like this. It would be like a relief, like a grief, but out of relief. This particular situation is a grief out of love. Just out of thinking and knowing that someone kind, someone that was so kind to me passed, and he is probably the last person that needed to go. So this one really hurts. I love you so much, Poppy. And I just want to end with this. Don't ever feel or let anyone make you feel guilty or gaslight you just because they're your blood. I know that with us Hispanics, we grow up around that a lot. And the next time that you hear blood is thicker than water, tell that ignorant idiot person that that's not even the fucking quote. Okay? It's the blood of the covenant is stronger than the water of the womb. Don't let anyone make you feel that because they're your family, they're allowed to hurt you and you are responsible for them or indebted to them in any way. If there is anything that this part of my life has taught me, is that when I look back at my entire life, that is the lesson. And I hope you guys understand that. And I hope that this helps anyone who's been in my situation or feels this way. And like I always say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. The lessons will find you. Thank you for listening today. Until next time, this is Life Vetted.